So the Las Vegas Raiders have officially wrapped up mandatory minicamp, and on the final day of mandatory minicamp, Pete Carroll actually spoke at the end of camp. He had a presser in which he told us multiple things related to the Las Vegas Raiders, and he was asked one question specifically about the Las Vegas Raiders running back room, and he kind of implied that the Raiders are going to be switching to a running back by committee approach. And some people are kind of confused as to why he would say this when you have Ashton Jeanty, a guy you essentially drafted with the 6th overall pick, a guy who most people think should be a top 2 to 3 running back in the NFL. But yet the Raiders are going to go by a running back by committee approach. So could Ashton Jeanty potentially not start for the Raiders? Could you guys imagine if that ended up happening? I want you guys to listen into the actual question, the answer, and then I'm going to talk about this on the other side.
So over recent weeks, have you guys figured out how you're going to maybe divvy up the workload between Jeanty or Mostert? Or,
they're gonna show us that, when they get their chance to compete. I love having multiple guys play. I'm not relying on one guy. Thunder, lightning back in the day. Whatever it takes to get it done. So we're gonna let the guys play for that, play for their play time. Raheem, I love having him. He's an experienced guy that's been a great speedster for years. We've defended him for years. He's been a real nightmare for us. And I think Zamir had a really, really good camp too. He had made a statement of being the bigger of the guys. He's really fast and he's the biggest guy that we have. Ashton looks every bit what we would hoped he would look like. And he caught the ball really well. He understood stuff, took everything really seriously. Gave terrific effort throughout, and we made a big deal to him. Everybody's watching you, and he embraced the thought of it. And so it's going to be it's going to be exciting to see what happens. We got Sincere back too, late in the camp period here. He had a couple of really nice games last year, and he showed really good quickness and kind of a knack for running the ball. So when we go to camp, it'll just be game on, and we'll see what happens.
So there you guys have it, right? Basically, Pete Carroll is putting it out there that I am not going to rely on just one guy. I love to have multiple guys, and he talked a little bit about some of the different guys that the Raiders have. But some people are now taking this and saying that the Raiders are not going to give Ashton Jeanty 100% of the touches, and he might not even be the starter. To me, it's just a ridiculous take that some people are having. People, I think, are way too reactive to certain things that coaches are saying. Sometimes people are too reactive, and I understand, fantasy football, dynasty, those type of things. It's understandable that some people are going to feel like that. But I'm going to be honest with you guys, man. To me, what Pete Carroll is telling me is that the Las Vegas Raiders are essentially going to end up going into this season, and they're going to say that we're going to split up carries, we're going to allow some other guys to have some touches, and we're going to basically keep Ashton Jeanty fresh. We're going to keep him as fresh as possible. We're not going to overutilize this guy. If you guys go back to the Seattle Seahawks days, especially most recently, right, the Seattle Seahawks had multiple running backs. They drafted a running back in the 2nd round, and then a year later in the 3rd round, right? The Seattle Seahawks felt like, hey, we want to continue to have multiple running backs to keep our main guy fresh. And even before that, the Seahawks had spent multiple picks on multiple running backs. And to me, that's just a Pete Carroll mindset, right? You're going to put your best players out there. So Ashton Jeanty will 100% have 20 touches a game, but you also don't want to overwork him. You don't want to have him have too many carries in between the tackles. If Raheem Mostert can give you 5.1 yards per attempt in any given game, and then on the other side, Ashton Jeanty might give you 5.8, you're going to give Mostert those carries to get you those 5 yards per run, right? To me, what this guy is basically saying is we're going to keep Ashton Jeanty fresh, but we'll also utilize multiple other running backs, and we're going to get multiple guys involved, give multiple guys touches. We saw what Sincere McCormick was able to do in the 3 games where he started last year where he was healthy. Keep in mind, the 4th game he played in, he had like 7 carries, only had like 12 or 15 yards. He did end up getting hurt in that game, but the 3 games prior to that in which he started, the guy averaged over 5 yards per attempt. What I'm hearing from Pete Carroll is that we're going to get Sincere McCormick some touches. We're going to get him the ball 5 or 6 times in any given game. And if he catches fire, then we'll start giving him 10 touches in a game. If Raheem Mostert struggles, it'll be Sincere McCormick as that RB2 to go to, kind of go 1 and 2 with Ashton Jeanty. And if Sincere McCormick's struggling, then we'll go with Raheem Mostert as the 1 and 2 with Ashton Jeanty. To me, there's just nothing else to this. Ashton Jeanty's going to be the number 1 running back. He'll have 15 to 20 touches a game. He'll be kept fresh, so he doesn't need those runs down when it's, on the 1 yard line and the Raiders are going to run it in, you don't have to give Ashton Jeanty those touches. And I understand some people will say, hey, fantasy football this, fantasy football that. But to me, the most brutal plays come down, within the 1 or 2 yard line. 4th and 1, get the ball to Zamir White. Let Zamir White punch it in. Get the ball to Sincere McCormick or Raheem Mostert and let these guys try punching it in, right? Whichever guy's legit, right? We know Raheem Mostert had like 20 touchdowns 2 years ago. So the guy can definitely score touchdowns as well. And just keep Ashton Jeanty fresh, right? And that's all I kind of take away from what Pete Carroll is saying. I don't think there's a real competition or anything to that tune. We know who the Raiders running back is going to be. But speaking about running backs, there's another running back that the Las Vegas Raiders have. This is going to be a guy we just drafted this most recent season. That is Dylan Laube. And Laube is apparently working as the Raiders punt return guy. Now, the Raiders have 2 guys that have been returning punts in minicamp and OTAs that are most likely going to end up being the guy for the Raiders when it comes to returning punts. I guess there's a 3rd guy as well, but the 3rd guy being Dante Thornton Jr. I think Dante Thornton's going to end up having a real role for the Raiders on the offensive side. Dylan Laube may not have the type of role where, like, Ashton Jeanty will have 20 touches. I don't think Laube is ever going to be that type of player, at least, where we're kind of at this season. But Laube will return punts. Tommy Millott is another guy that the Raiders drafted. He's another guy that's been returning punts. To me, one of those 2 guys will be the punt returner for the Las Vegas Raiders this season. But I do love the fact that Dylan Laube is getting that work as a potential punt returner. When the Raiders brought this guy in from, essentially a low-level school, right? Most of the time, these type of players aren't getting drafted. But when the Raiders drafted this guy, we knew he had a ton of upside. And even coming into last year, our running back room was really, really, really bad, right? Coming in, we had Zamir White, we had Alexander Madison, those guys that weren't really that good. And then when Dylan Laube got drafted, I felt that this guy had potential, and he had a real opportunity to end up taking some reps away from those guys. And he was never able to do it, never was able to hold on to the football. And I'm not even sure as we go forward if he'll be a starting caliber running back at this point for the Raiders, especially given that Ashton Jeanty is now the guy. They went out and got Raheem Mostert. More than that, even Sincere McCormick showed us something last year. But do also keep in mind, McCormick's in year 4. So hopefully Dylan Laube, by the time he hits year 3 or year 4, hopefully he's kind of in that same boat as where McCormick's at. But I do like the fact that he's returning punts. I would love for him to be our punt returner this year. He's already spent 1 year in the NFL at this point. And then he's also shifty. He's also quick. The thing with returning punts versus returning kicks, one of the big differences is as a punt returner, you're going to catch the ball and you have people running full speed at you. You can take 1 step to the left as a punt returner and a guy's going to just straight up miss, right? Because they're running full speed, and as a punt returner, you're not running full speed the same way, right? When you're looking at a kick returner, especially now, these guys are running full speed one way, another guy's coming full speed the other. It's a little bit different. Dylan Laube, to me, would be a really, really interesting player returning punts. We'll see what he can do as the Raiders kind of go forward. I want to talk a little bit about something that I actually spoke to. I don't want to switch focus specifically, right? I want to talk a little bit about some offensive lineman stuff. I want to talk about something that one of the guys that I had been speaking to at camp that actually told me yesterday. It was a question I had for him specifically in regards to the offensive line. I wanted to get his thoughts on, what does the first team unit look like right now? And then what does the second team unit look like? Because oftentimes one of the things we will be able to figure out with looking at the first team unit, looking at the second team unit, is not only where a guy's playing, but where is he competing at, right? Because right now in OTAs, right, the first team unit that's out there, that's not going to be the starting unit. Chances are 1 or 2 of those guys will end up losing their jobs. But right now what it looks like, according to this guy, is Colton Miller's playing left tackle. Dylan Parham looks to be locked in at left guard, although he did get hurt, which we'll talk about in a second here. Colton Miller at left tackle, Dylan Parham at left guard, Jackson Powers Johnson at center, Alex Kappa at right guard, Dylan Parham at right tackle. DJ Glaze at right tackle. So that's the unit, right? Miller is going to be locked in. He will 100% start at left tackle. Center, 100% will be Jackson Powers Johnson. And right now, it looks like Alex Kappa is the only guy playing that right guard position, right? No guy has rotated in at this point for Alex Kappa, right? He's basically locked himself in. And then, of course, DJ Glaze at right tackle has also locked himself in. Now, left guard, from my understanding, has kind of been, it has been rotations with Jordan Meredith and Dylan Parham. One of the interesting things that did happen was Dylan Parham actually ended up getting hurt on that final day. And, on the second mandatory minicamp day. And Darren Munford jumped in at left guard. And we already spoke about this in yesterday's video. But Darren Munford jumped in at left guard. Now, here's the interesting thing. When the second team unit came in, Darren Munford went to right guard, right? So he is 100% the guard at this point for the Raiders. But with the first team unit, when Parham went down, right, the first guard kind of goes down. It was Dylan Parham that got those reps. And again, that might not hold true when that time actually comes in training camp. But the fact Darren Munford right now is basically the third guard, right? Alex Kappa, Dylan Parham, number 3 right now is essentially going to be Darren Munford. To me, that's just an interesting thought process to have. Because a lot of us would think, hey, Caleb Rogers potentially jumps in, Jordan Meredith potentially jumps in. My understanding right now is Jordan Meredith's being worked as the number 2 center. And that could change as well, right? Like, as we get into training camp, there's a chance that, hey, if Dylan Parham goes down, instead of having Darren Munford come in, they'll end up just going forward with Jordan Meredith at left guard. But it does look like Meredith right now is the number 2 center for the Raiders. And Darren Munford's ahead of him, at least right now. Now, when it comes to the backup guys, and this is kind of interesting as well. So Darren Munford's not playing tackle at all anymore, right? He's been fully switched over to the guard position. So he is not going to be a tackle. So Colt Miller will be a starting tackle on one side. And of course, the other side is kind of up there, right? We'll see who ends up winning that job out. But it does look like DJ Glaze will be the number 2, or he'll be the starting tackle, right? That other tackle outside of Miller. But the backup tackles right now is going to be Charles Grant and Dalton Wagner. Those are the the number 2 unit offensive tackles for the Raiders. Now, it's interesting because Dalton Wagner has historically always kind of played that right tackle position. And Charles Grant has historically always played that left tackle position. And that's kind of what we're seeing right now as well, which means Colton Miller's backup right now is Charles Grant. Now, I'm going to just make the assumption the Raiders want to try to keep, Charles Grant was a left tackle in college. They want to keep him on that side as he kind of gets used to the NFL speed. I do think when training camp comes around, I do think Charles Grant will also play a little bit of right tackle, but right now he's exclusively used on the left side of the offensive line. Caleb Rogers right now is running with the number 2 unit at right guard. So to me, again, that, it's just interesting the way these guys are lined up right now, what position they're playing, right? Guys aren't being asked like, hey, you're going to swing over one or the other. That's not happening. Like, guys are taking most snaps at a certain spot. Darren Munford was the exception to that. He was playing right guard, but he was swapped over to left guard when Dylan Parham went down. So again, it's just interesting to see where the Raiders offensive line is kind of at. And it'll be interesting to see what this, what the units look like as we kind of continue to get into camp, which is like basically 5 weeks away at this point. I am excited to see Dalton Wagner's development a little bit as well, right? Because I do think Dalton Wagner has upside and potential, but for him to actually hit that, he has to develop. And it will be interesting to see if, DJ Glaze does win out the job. What's the season this season look like? And then is Dalton Wagner realistically going to compete with DJ Glaze, right? I like Dalton Wagner when he came out. The fact that we got him as a UDFA, I thought there was a ton of potential and a ton of upside. Now, when I say that, that doesn't mean I think a guy's going to become a starting caliber Hall of Fame type player, right? When a guy's a UDFA and I say I like this guy, usually that just means he's going to make the roster. He'll stick around for a couple of years. And that's kind of what we've seen with Dalton Wagner up to this point, right? We'll see what the development trajectory is like as we kind of go forward. And then we'll also see with Charles Grant, if he ends up staying on the left side. Again, Colt Miller contract, Charles Grant playing left tackle. We'll see how this all kind of works out. And then let's wrap this video up. I want to just give you guys a quick update. So we've officially signed Jermaine Pratt, right? Like officially, like the contract's official. And the guy the Raiders ended up moving was actually safety Jonathan Sutherland, who I believe the Raiders just brought in this past offseason. Don't quote me on that, but I'm pretty sure that was the case. Maybe he came in during the season last year at some point. But the Raiders released a safety, and they essentially brought in Jermaine Pratt. Now, There's also a chance they still sign a couple more players. Shaquille Griffin, they brought him in yesterday. It will be interesting to see if they sign a corner. Will they release a corner as well, right? But this was just an update that I wanted to quickly bring to you guys because of the fact that, I thought it would be a linebacker that ended up getting released, but it is a safety, right? So we'll see what ends up happening. I do also want to just kind of state this. I think the Raiders linebackers are a lot better than what people realize. I know it's guys that are older, they're veterans and they're aging, of course, right? Jermaine Pratt's 29. Devin White is 27. I think both guys came out in the same year as well, right? Pratt was obviously older in college when he came out. White was a 3-year starter. He came out. And then even Landon Roberts is like 30 years old. So yes, we do have 3 guys that are a lot older, but they're also experienced. And I think this scheme, if you're playing cover 3, you don't have to be super athletic. You're not going to be running down the seams with tight ends and with running backs that are running wheel routes and those. As a linebacker, you're not going to be doing that as much, right? But the Raiders do still want to make sure guys like Devin White can run. If it's a cover 3, one of the cover 3 beaters on the offensive side is going to be basically an over route. And as a cover 3 linebacker, you have to carry those over routes. So Devin White or, Jermaine Pratt will have to cover those over routes. Guys are smart. They'll be able to figure it out. And then, of course, we do have some of the younger guys, Amari Gaynor, Cody Lindenberg, Tommy Eichenberg. We'll see what these guys can kind of develop into as well. I do, once again, think the Raiders linebacking group is much, much, much better than what people realize. Some people will say last year's group was better. It's debatable, right? And we will find that out this year. I don't know if I would say last year's group is 100% better. Robert Spillane might be better than all these guys, right? Jermaine Pratt's probably the guy that can compete with Robert Spillane. But we also have a lot more depth this year, right? Last year, I don't know anyone that was a good linebacker for the Raiders outside of Robert Spillane. This year, we have like 6 guys that could actually end up being productive players. So we'll see what ends up happening. Let me know what you guys think in the comments below. Thumbs up, subscribe, and I'll see you guys next time with another video.